All right, in this video, we're going to look at the test scores application. Before we actually look at the code, let's go ahead and run it, and I will show you what this application does. So I'm going to right click on my index.html file. Actually, I think it has to be open for me to do that. Say open in default browser. And here it is. The page says enter test score. I'm going to put in a 70, 80, and a 90. So it asked me for 3 test scores. It reprints the scores. It printed out 70, 80, 90. Those were the 3 scores I entered. And then it tells us the average score, which was 80. All right, so let's look at the code here. Here's my HTML page, and it's a little bit simpler than the last page we looked at because the JavaScript is not in it. We have basically the same head section with different title. Average test scores gets printed up here, and we have a link to our style sheet just like we did before, and that style sheet is very similar to the last application. Sets some colors for the body, sets some color and fonts for the body, sets some styling for the H1, sets some styling for our labels to format them to go to the left side and their width, and it aligns their text to the right to make nice, neat columns. Formats the input and the span sections. Okay. So the things that you see appearing on here come from that CSS sheet. That's not too important for what we're doing right now. So let's look at the actual body of our index page. Okay, we have a very small main section, and the main section only has the H1 that prints out the Test Scores app right there. And then it has the JavaScript linked through a script tag. So it specifies the source as the file test_scores.js. Makes this page a little simpler to look at because the JavaScript isn't mixed in with our HTML. Which I would argue is a better way to do it, and that will be most of the JavaScript we look at will be in a separate file. It's just nice to separate your HTML from your CSS from your JavaScript. So over here is that test_scores.js file. This is the JavaScript for our application. Let's take a look at it. We start out with the use strict. We set up a variable, initialize a variable called total. So let total equal 0. It's initialized to the value 0. And then we have 3 identical sections of code that do the same thing. We prompt for a test score. Then that test score gets parsed to an integer because it surrounds enter the test score. And it gets stored in a constant called score1. So this gets score1 for us. Score1 gets added on to the total. So total plus equals score1 means take the total, add this current score to it, and store it back in total. Then we do the same thing. We prompt for the test score. We parse it as an integer, store it in score2. Take the total that we had, that's already been modified up here, but now we're going to add score2 onto that total. Take the total equals total plus score2 is how we could have written it. Could have done this, which would take the total, add score to it, add the score2 to it, and then store it back in total. It means the exact same thing if we use the shortcut of doing it this way. And then the third prompt, enter a test score, stores it in score3 and adds that to the total. And then in this next spot, we take the total and we divide it by 3 because 3 values, we're finding the average. Parse that back to an integer and store that in a constant called average. And then down here, we're generating the HTML using a template literal, which is the method of concatenation and substitution, surrounded everything with a backtick. So we're going to concatenate all the things inside these backticks together. It's going to make a paragraph to begin with, then the word score 1 equals, and then we're substituting in score 1. That creates this part right here. Then another paragraph, score 2 equals, and then substituting in the value of score 2 that the person typed in. The second paragraph, see right here. And then same thing for the third paragraph, and then the same thing for the average score. That all gets concatenated together using this template literal. And then we call the document.write method that writes this constructed piece of HTML, gets written to our document in the spot back in our index file where the script was. So this was the end of the page from just the HTML, and the results of this get added onto it in the right section. This is inside the main, which is inside the body, and that's where the generated code appears in our document.